Okay, so now, as I said, uh, all the jobs, whatever that we'll be creating later, would have to run on some kind of servers or machine. So these machines are called as nodes or slave. So it is very important for us. The first thing which we have to do is set up these nodes or clients on which all the jobs that you want to run should be executing. So typically, what I'm going to do right now is, since having different servers for the network, it will be quite difficult to have a network and set it up. So instead of that, just to make it simple, I will try to create a node for my same server, which means the machine on which I'm working, I will give the reference as node, so that the same machine will internally act as a node, but it would be correcting or connecting it separately and then working onto it. So that is the only difference. But other than that, in the production, what you will be doing is you will be going ahead with giving a same name, but that will be on a remote machine. Okay, so even you can do the similar kind of thing for your testing purpose. So you really don't need separate machines to practice. But in production, there will be servers which is in the remote, and you'll be giving details about how to connect them. Okay, so if you want to see how to create nodes, once again go to Jenkins or directly click Manage Jenkins here. And in this Manage Jenkins, you will see an option called Manage Nodes. So using this, we will be creating or deleting some nodes on which jobs has to be run. And by default, if you see, it shows that there is a node which is already added called master. And what is this? This is nothing but the machine on which the Jenkins is running. So yesterday, if you remember, I was saying by default, if none of the jobs is specified to, sorry, none of the nodes is specified to a job, then the job by default will run on the machine in which Jenkins is running. That is nothing but the master itself. So this would be the default node which has been added by Jenkins on which it is running. So to add a new node, go to this option on the left side called new node. So first option that you see here, it is saying that do you want to create a dumb slave? That means it doesn't know anything about it. We have to instruct on how it has to behave. So for that, we will go ahead with the option called dumb slave, and then we will give some name. Okay, now assume that we want to do some kind of work on a Red Hat machine, okay, or a Red Hat Linux server. So I'm just giving some name so that it will be easy for us to understand. Now, once you have given here, then we have to give certain details about what is that server and how the job should be running. Okay, so coming again to this very first option, number of executors. So we had given this option in the master also, right? The same thing applies here. At a given point of time, how many jobs can a Jenkins run on this node? So say that you have 10 jobs, and can all the 10 jobs run on this node? It is depending on how many executors that you specify. So number of executors has to be chosen again based on the hardware configuration of this server on which you want to run the job. So for now, I can leave it as one, or you can change it as many as you want, so that if multiple jobs are trying to run on this node, then based on the number of jobs that you have specified, only that many parallel jobs will be running. So what about the other things? Now in Jenkins, if you're trying to trigger more than one job or more than one instance of a job, depending on where it is running and how many executors that it can handle, it will be waiting in queue. So as soon as the first jobs which has been triggered completes, the next one in the queue will trigger and then proceed. So like this, it will allow a job to run parallelly based on the number of executors on where it has to run. Okay, so that is what we call it as number of executors. Okay, now the next important thing here, what you see is remote root directory. So try to understand this. What is remote root directory? So typically Remote root directory means whenever you are trying to run some job on this server called Red Hat, right? Which is typically going to be in some remote location. So what will this master Jenkins do? Try to connect to this server and run the job whatever that you are tying up with this server. So in that case, now in this machine, where exactly the job should run, that is what we call it as remote root directory. That means, suppose if you're saying some simple command like copy a file, okay, now where do you want to copy the file? So whenever that job is connecting to this machine, it will go to this directory where you have specified, and in this directory Jenkins will be running. Okay, so it is something similar to what your home directory happens. So if you guys are not clear, what happens is whenever you log into a machine, especially on a Linux machine, then there are few things that happens. The first thing what happens is, oh, 1 minute. So the first thing that happens is when you log in to a machine, the username and password will be verified. And based on that, the first thing that will happen is you will be going to a place called home directory, wherein home directory is a location on a Linux or a Unix machine, which is being assigned to the account through which you are trying to log in, so that in that directory you have all the permissions to create, store, and do everything. Okay, because unlike Windows, which will allow only one user to log in, the major advantage of Linux is at a given point of time, multiple users can log in the same time. So in that case, now if everyone are trying to work, then it will be a problem. It's like in Windows, if you see, you will allow everyone to log into C drive and work, it will not happen. So in that case, now every user should be having some permission so that he has his own space to do something there. So in that case, whenever an account is being created, by default, a system administrator will assign a directory, and we call it as home directory because that is the place where you will be using it whenever you log into the machine by default. And this directory will have all the permissions for that particular user account. Okay, and once you log into the home directory, then the next thing is a particular environment will be set based on the user. That is the shell, whatever we call. So the user, when he logs in, he will be going to the home directory and a particular environment will be set. So whenever you try to run, always you will be running some commands from your home directory. Okay, so what will happen is there are some scripts or some methods like SSH and RSH using which you can terminally connect to a machine. Okay, say that you have a server within your network, and if you want to connect it, you can use this commands called SSH or RSH, that is secure shell and remote shell. So through this, if you give the machine name, okay, it will try to connect and ask the username and password. In the same case, even this, both the things will go to that machine and change the path to the default home directory so that you will be running. So as soon as you log in, all the commands whatever you will be entering will be based on this. It is the same concept but little changed that will be happening in Windows. So see this, when I say command prompt, where am I going by default? It is going to this directory, right? So in your machine, if you try to do the same thing, instead of this user ID which I have used to log in, it will be using your ID through which you are logging to the machine. So like this, any kind of prompt that you open, it goes to the default home directory assigned to the user. That means this user who has logged into this machine and his home directory is this place. So that is why it is always going here. And from this place, you can do any kind of work, and whatever command by default that you are entering, it is entering from which place? It is entering from this directory. So in the same case, when you are connecting through Jenkins, what we have to do is, instead of using the home directory, we want to use a separate place so that Jenkins can maintain all its related files and execute all the commands based on this. Okay, so remember, if Jenkins is running a job based on a server, then it will always be running all the commands or the steps that you specify in the job based on this directory of that server. So that is what we call it as remote root directory. Okay, so now since I was trying to say that I am going to use my own machine as a reference for this, then I will give a path in this. Okay, so I'll do one thing. So, okay, so I have created a folder like this, which is going to act as a remote root directory. That means now if any time if we are using this Red Hat machine or node to do some job, it will come here and it will be executing all the steps. Okay, so let me give this like this. If it is a Linux machine, then you will be giving the path something like this. Instead of this, it will always start from the slash and you will be giving the corresponding path in a directory specific to this machine, so that in that directory all the jobs will be running and you can maintain the log, everything there. Okay, so once you have done, the next thing is labels. So what do you mean by label? So label is nothing but a representation for a group of jobs, or sorry, group of nodes. So why do you want to specifically use that? So for example, yesterday I said you will be having what? A master, right? So in that master, what will happen? You will have a particular job, okay? And say that you have a particular job, what it does some task, and how it will do, it will try to connect to a specific machine. Right, now say that this is the Red Hat machine what we have specified. Okay, now if I say that I want to execute this job only on this, it will always be executing here. Now like this we will be having multiple servers. Now suddenly, if for some reason, if this server is not accessible or it is not up and running, then this job will not run. So instead of tying a job specific to a server, what we can do is we can create something called as groups, or we can group these servers and create a label to it, so that now instead of pointing or hard coding a job to a particular server or a node, you can simply refer only to this label or the group. So that what Jenkins will do is, okay, I want to run this job in one server of the group. So in this group, whatever machine or node is accessible to the Jenkins, then Jenkins will use that node and assign this job to run. So suppose if this machine has the resource to run this job, then it will run the job or schedule the job in this. Suppose if this is down and you have this available, then automatically Jenkins will assign the job to this machine and run. This is what I was referring as cron server replacement. Okay, so you don't have to worry anything about a machine is being up or not. So typically in the production, what they will do is they will try to group similar kind of servers and they will be running jobs like this, so that even though one machine is down, it will pick up automatically any other machine that is available in the group. So a group in Jenkins will be referred by a name called labels. So what we have to do is, now whenever you write a name here or a string here, automatically it is nothing but the label which you are creating, and it is being added to this node. So what you're trying to do is, rather than creating a label separately and attaching a node, you are directly creating a label. That means this node is part of this label, automatically it picks up like that. If you create one more node and configure, you can use the same string. So what automatically Jenkins will do is it will add both the servers to the same group or machine. So what I'll do is I will simply say test group. Okay, so now what does it mean? This machine is part of a group or a label called test. Okay, now once you have done, the next thing you have to tell to the master on how do you want to use this. So do you want to use this as much as possible? That means now say that you have created a Red Hat server, regardless of specifying a job whether to run this or not. If a job wants to run and if it finds this machine to run, it will automatically come and run. If you want, you can do this. If not, if you use the second option, what this means is only if in the job you are specifying to use this label, then corresponding to that it will use. If not, it will never ever use this machine for anything. That is what it means. So now if you apply this while creating a job, only when we say, okay, this job has to run on this label, by specifying the label, then it may run in this or this. Specifically, since we are configuring only one, it can run. If not, it will not run. For example, if you create one more job, okay, and if you want to run this job on this, it will never pick up because you have not specified this on the label. So that is what it means. Okay, now once you have done, the final thing what you have to say is how is that you are going to connect the Jenkins or the master Jenkins to this node. Okay, so there are various options through which you can do. So one of the things what you can do is you can try to do a SSH and connect it. So that means every time from the Jenkins it will try to do that SSH utility and connect onto that Red Hat server that we are trying to configure. Now, what will happen is sometimes it is not feasible to do. So instead of that, or if it is a Windows machine like what we are trying, you can create it as a service and add it to the Windows service. So by default, automatically this master Jenkins will use it as a service and run. But one of the best methods what everyone would be using because of the network latency is using this Java web start method. That means you don't need to have all those details, because if you say SSH and all, then you have to give the username, password, all those details. Okay, so instead of that, what we are going to do is just use this method of launching, that is Java web start. So what do you mean by Java web start? Since Jenkins is internally a Java based tool and it will be running Java only, so we will use Java, and through Java there is a mechanism where you can connect to this machine. So we will try using that. Okay, now once it is done, so it is saying that how long do you want to keep it alive. That means you want always the master to be connected to this, or do you want to connect it only when it is required, or only when a job has to run, you then you run. So based on that you can specify. So for now I will say keep this always connected. That means there should be a connection established between the master Jenkins and this particular node. Okay, and now even here we have options of choosing the environment variables. So if you want some specific environment variable to be set on this machine to run, then you can specify. If not, what will happen is the default value whatever that we have set in the global configuration initially will be taken here also. Okay, but some reason in some production for a specific job, if you don't want to have the same value or change it, then you can modify it based on the need. So it is something similar. Okay, did you guys get this? Any questions or doubts?
No, Adam.
Satvika, Shashank?
Adam.
Adam.
Okay, so once you save, you will see that a new node has been added. Okay, now if you see there, it is showing that it is not connected or it is offline. Even it will show here. So how will you make it connected? So if you go to it, so it is saying that since we have choose the Java web start method, we need this options to be running. That is, there are two ways to run. We call it as headless method or using a command method. Okay, just a minute. So there's two ways of connecting. So what you can do is either you can connect using this step, or there is a jar file called slave.jar. So if you just take this slave.jar onto the machine wherever you want to act as a node and run the step, then automatically this master Jenkins will be connecting to the slave or the node automatically. Okay, so now if you see, like assume that now I am working on this red hat, that means I have gone to that place. So if you click, it will be downloading the jar file. So typically you take this jar file, go to this remote machine and then try to run this command. Okay, now think this, that we are connected to this red hat server. Now in that red hat server, go to the directory where you have place this file. So in this case, now we have just now downloaded it, right? So I'll go to the download, and from this, if I run this command, now watch it closely. Now using this slave.jar from this machine, where this is acting as Red Hat, because internally this is my own machine, but for reference I'm just trying to show you as if this is a remote machine. So in production, what you will be doing is you will be connecting to this machine, copying this slave.jar from wherever that you have kept to this machine, and in that machine you just run this command. Okay, so now if you look, it will be connected. Okay, so if you come back here, now how is it connecting? Because from this Red Hat machine or the node what you have specified, you are giving the URL of where is your Jenkins running, right? So like this, if you use your production, instead of the local host, it will be pointing to the IP address or the machine name on which the Jenkins master is running, so that it automatically knows that master Jenkins is running in this, and the slave.jar allows a connection between the master Jenkins which is present in this place to the node or the slave from where you are running this command. Okay, so what you have to do is you just run this as a cron job so that it will automatically be running, or you can run whenever you want this node to be used. Okay, so now if you see, it is connected, and if you simply go back, you can see that the red color icon has gone, and it means that it is connected. So now this master is connected to this node, but internally if you see, both are same, but logically what it means is this machine or the master Jenkins as connected to this particular node what we have configured. So now going forward, if you use it, it will be connecting through this jar and it will be running all the options. Okay, so let me leave it like this. So now what I can do is, now like this you can create many number of nodes. For example, let me create one more node. So I can, instead of Red Hat, now I can say maybe CentOS. Okay, so now if you see, earlier there was only one option called dump slave, but now it is giving one more option called copy existing from node. So what the difference between these two is that in Jenkins we have a feature wherein from an existing configuration of some kind of thing what you have put, you can actually recreate or copy the values to a new configuration. So this is an option which is good because you don't have to go through setting up everything. Suppose if you want to create multiple jobs with similar kind of configuration with just some small changes, you can actually recreate it using this copy option. Okay, so now what you can do is simply if I say copy existing node, and now what is the option and the value? I can say the name of the what? The server which we have give or the node which we have given. So now if I just say okay, you see whatever value that we had given for the Red Hat node, it has taken all those things here. So now the name of the server is CentOS, and for the demonstration what I will do is I will leave it like this. I will not connect it, and again see this, we have added it to the group called or the label called test. So now in the test label, there are two servers. So it is showing it here, right? So if you click this, you can see it is showing there are two nodes in this group called test, wherein one is connected and the other one is not connected. So I will leave it like this for demonstration purpose. So once now you have created the nodes configuration based on where you want to run, then you will proceed with creating the jobs. So creating a job, now either you can click on this option for new item, or you can click this for the very first thing. Now since it is the first job that we are going to create, it will be allowing it, but later part it will not be showing anything, and all the jobs that you have created will be displayed here on your home page. So we will go with this option called new item. And what is this new item? You are actually trying to create a job. So now when you want to create a job, Jenkins gives us certain built-in options on the configuration type. So by default, you will always be working on this first type called freestyle, and majority of the time you will be using only this. Now what this means is, now the configurations will be very straightforward and no default configurations will be done. So we have to choose what and all we have to work using this job. Okay, suppose if it is the same thing, you want to run some Maven specific task, then if you use this type for the job, then certain values for the Maven will be pre-existing. So you don't have to specify to the Jenkins saying that for this Maven use this or use this. Okay, and these two are completely different, wherein multi-configuration is that if you want to form something like a cluster, or you have one more Jenkins running on someplace else, like you have two masters, and if you want to connect it between those two to perform some hi-fi tasks, then you will do. But if not, majority of the things, or 99%, you will be using freestyle or specifically Maven if you want, because this will give you all the options that we want to work on. So we will be going these two only majority of the time. Okay, so now what is that we have to do? So let me choose the freestyle and I'll give you the name. So I will say first job. Okay, and I'll save it. So now if you say, it will open a page for configuration. So now in this, there are various things that we can do using a job. And if you try to look, all these things, whatever that you're trying to look here, are the default options that the Jenkins gives. Like this, if you want some specific thing to be done, then there are plugins associated to it, using which you can do some additional task. If not, you can use the default behavior whatever Jenkins is giving and you can work. All right, so in that case, what and all are the configurations that is available in this Jenkins? So the first few options, what you are saying from here to here, specifies how the job should be running and where the job should be running. Okay, and then the next thing if you see is, so once you have specified how the Jenkins should be running, then you should be telling when the Jenkins should be, I mean, when the job should be running. So at what time or what date or what scenario you want to run. So that is what will be used by Jenkins, and you will be specifying how to run it using these options called build triggers. Okay, and after that, This step called build step is the actual commands or whatever task that you want to execute through this Jenkins job that you will be specifying it here. And in case something you want to do as a post step after you have completed the task, then you will give it as a post build action. And source code management tabs or the values what you see here are the values. Suppose if in your job that you whatever you wanted to do, it has to connect to SCM and you have to do some kind of work, then you can use this option. So like this, you have to choose what and all are the options that you want to work and what is the process that you want to work and define that process. Okay, so based on how you are configuring, Jenkins will be working or running the job based on the scenarios what you have given. Okay, so we will go through one by one, or instead of that, what I'll do is let me take certain scenarios and explain what are the options that you have to use, because you will not be using all of them in one go. Okay, so you will see how to use each one of them. So now the first thing what we will do is we'll come by one, whichever is required. So now the first task what I want to do is just simply execute some basic command and see how Jenkins work. Okay, so for the very first thing what you have to do is let us see this option called discard old builds. Now when you run Jenkins job every time, so for every run, Jenkins will be maintaining the history of what you're doing. So in that case, for every run of Jenkins, it will be keeping a backup of the complete output of what that job has done on all the details, so that at any point of time if you want to refer to it you can use. So if you don't do, what will happen, the jobs will be just getting added and kept on going on. So like this, the number of jobs that has been backed up by Jenkins will be very high and it might create some performance issue. So it is a good practice to keep purging or deleting all the previous history. So this option can be used to delete all those details about this previous run. So how is that you want to delete? It gives you an option. So if you want, you can choose something based on the day. That means now you can say that keep all the history for 3 days and beyond 3 days you delete it. So if you want to say the days, then you can say based on the days, so that what will happen is based on the number of days that you have given, the job history will be maintained. So now if the job history exceeds the day whatever that you have given, then it will automatically be deleted. If not, you can choose the number of job histories that you want to keep, like 5, 10, 15, or 50, 20, whatever. Now if you give a number, then Jenkins will maintain only that many number of job history, and anything beyond it, it will keep deleting. So it will maintain only that many. So now for example, let me say 4 or 3. So at any given point of time, only 3 latest run or latest 3 runs history will be maintained by Jenkins for this particular job. Okay, so I will give it here. And next thing what I'm going to do is I am not specifying anything. I am just coming to the step called build step, and let us try to run some command and see. Okay, now if you want to run, so if you go here, you will be asked to add a step for build. And now in this, there will be various options that is being given, and by default, if you see, you will be given two kind of ways. That is, if you want to run some builds using Maven, you can use or run some ant based builds. If not, you can simply run a command prompt just like what you are running in your Windows or Unix. So for example, what I am interested to run is some simple echo message like this. I want to enter the same command in the Jenkins. Now for that, what is that you need? You need a command prompt like this. right? So what Jenkins does is it gives you an option called command prompt, that is Windows based or shell. Now if it is a Unix machine on which you want to run some command, then you will use shell. In our case, if you see, all those things are Windows based, so I will just use the Windows bashed command. Now whatever that you're seeing here is just exactly similar to a command prompt. So whatever command that you can run here can also be run here. And not only that, you can give multiple commands, or you can even write a complete script inside this itself, so that the way how normally operating system will work, in the same concept, Jenkins will run each command in the same order what you have given. So what I'll do is I'll just put some messages just for understanding. Okay, so what Jenkins is going to do is it is going to run each of the command one after other. So this is what I am instructing Jenkins to do. Okay, so the very first thing what you need to know is, now I said if you are specifying a job to run, we need to specify two things. That is how the job should run, when the job should run, and what the job should run. Correct? Now, if you see, we just told to the Jenkins what exactly to run and how exactly to run. But we didn't tell two things, that is when exactly you want to run this command or whatever that you have specified, and the other thing is where exactly you want to run. So those two things we didn't tell, right? So what will happen for that is, let's come to the place called where. So as I said, if you don't give any job specific to this, sorry, any specific node to this job, then it will be running by default on the master itself. Okay, and the second option, that is where exactly you want to run, is okay. Now when do you want to run? So for that, in Jenkins there are two ways that you can trigger a job. Okay, so what will happen is, if you give a schedule details on when you want to run the job, then automatically based on the details Jenkins will be running the job at that time. So if you don't give, or if not, there is one more way called on demand basis. Okay, that is whenever you want, you can run the job on the demand based on when exactly you want to run, rather than waiting for the schedule. If you just suddenly want to run the job, you can run the job at that time. So now, even though if you don't schedule or specify a schedule, you can still use this option and run on the demand, or if you just say run it now, it will run. Okay, so let's try what is that option. So if you see here, after saving the job, you will be getting an option called build now. So whenever I click this, it means Jenkins has to run this job at that time itself. So if I click this, what will happen? If you see here, it is taking some time. Why? Because if you remember, in the initial configuration, I gave the quiet period as 5 seconds. So what it is doing, initially it is going to wait for those 5 seconds and then run the job. So now what it has done is it has run the job for the first time. So this will be the number of the execution of your job. So if you want to know what is the output that it has done, so if you go to this, either you can click on this, or if you click, it will be saying the console output, the same option. If you come to this, now if you see, it has run the commands in the same way how you would have executed on the command prompt, right? So there is no difference. Suppose if I had said like this, it would have executed, right? It is the same way that it is executing here. Okay, but where is it executing? If you see, it is executing by default on the master itself. Okay, so what we will do now is, let us try to add a node specifically on which it has to run, or internally we will say which group or the label which on which this job should be running. So how will you go back to the configuration page of the job which is already created is you can click on this job and you can go to the configure option. So it will once again show you this page. Okay, so in this page now, if you come a little down, so here you have this last option in the first column which asks you restrict where this project can be run. So if you click this, it will ask you to give the label on which you want to run. So now if I give that label called test that we have created, okay, so see, it says by default there are two servers that is available. Okay, and now if I apply and save it, so if I once again click build now, why? Because we didn't give any schedule, right? So when you say build now, it will go ahead and run it. And if you want to see this, okay, now see what it has done. It is trying to use the label called test. So in this label or group called test, there were two servers. And in that, the CentOS, whatever that we created, is not connected. So automatically, what is the node which is available in that, or which is the one which is connected? We have connected the Red Hat node. So that is why it is using the Red Hat node to run. Getting it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Adam. Yes.
Yes, Adam.
Okay. So now we have specified exactly the job should be running. Okay. Now let us twist it a little bit. So now what I want to do is now rather than printing this command, I want to create a file. So that means if I just simply redirect it like this to a file, okay, I'll say hello.txt. Now what this is going to do, it is going to create a file called hello.txt and add all the lines that it is printing. So now instead of printing it on the screen, it will be redirecting the content to it. So automatically it will create a file called hello.txt. Okay, now let me show you that. So in this folder, okay, now if I do the same thing, I printed this, right? I will say demo.txt. Okay, it didn't print, but why? If you see here, it created a file called demo.txt. Okay, so that is what it is going to do. There you have, we got this file. So instead of printing, it is trying to just redirect by this command. So what is that we need now is the same thing. When you run this job, what it is going to do, it is going to create this file. Okay, okay, now what I'll do is I will say build now. So it has built. Okay, now, the question is, what did it do? It used this machine called Red Hat or the node, and it has ran this command, whatever that you have asked it or instructed. Now, where exactly it is put, or where is this file located now? Any guess, or can anyone tell me now where is this file created?
In the
Is it
root
inside?
directory which you mentioned,
No, first thing, where are you running this command? You're running in this machine or in
it's
this
on.
node, right? Typically,
Yep.
it is on
Mhm.
this. Okay, now in this server, where exactly the file would be located? What is this?
First job. First job.
No, what is this directory? So the job is being run in this directory. So what is this directory? So if you remember,
Present
I
working directory.
what was this directory? We added something called as remote root directory. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yes, I can.
yes,
So what did
yes,
I tell? So I said whenever you are using the Jenkins to run on this job, typically the Red Hat, it should run on this directory. That is what I said, right? So what Jenkins is doing is now it will go to the remote directory, and in that, just for understanding in a better way, it will create a folder called workspace and create a directory in the name of the job that you are running, and inside that it will be running all the commands. So in that case, now this file would be present in this because all the commands or steps that you're trying to run will be run inside this directory in the remote root directory. So remember this, anything that you try to ask Jenkins to run, it will always create a folder in the name of the job inside the remote directory of the machine on which it is running or on the node where it is running, and inside it it will be executing. So in that case, when this command has been executed in this directory, if you go inside it, you will see this file hello.txt, and there is where you have the content. Getting it? Why is the need of remote root directory?
yes, Aaron.
What about others? Did you get that?
Yes, Adam.
Okay, so remember this, why it is important, because now tomorrow if you are running some command, okay, now say you want to execute some file which is present in this machine. Now that server or that machine will have the file in some other directory. So if you're trying to call that particular script or command, you have to give the path relative to this directory where you are giving, or you have to give the complete path from where you can access the command whatever you want to run. If not, all those commands or tasks that you are asking Jenkins to run, it will be running in the root directory of that node on which you are trying to run. So you have to either give the relative path with respect to this directory or the complete path every time that you specify. Okay, did you get that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have specified the node where to run and how exactly it runs. So what we'll do is let's go to the configure and now give some time on which it has to run. Okay, so now let's go to this option. So now coming to this option called build triggers. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to give a scheduled time on which this job should be automatically run by Jenkins. Now for that, we will use this option called build periodically in the build triggers. Okay, so what it does is it gives us an option. Now this option is similar to your cron tab entry in your Linux or Unix machines. So in your Linux or Unix machine, there will be a utility called cron. Okay, so we generally call it as cron tab, or the exact name for the binary which runs is called cron tab. So if you run this command called cron tab-l, it will list you all the jobs that it has been specified by your user ID, or in case if you want to edit it, you can just say cron tab-me, so that it will open up one small page wherein it is just like a normal VI editor page. So you will go add all the content and then save it so that the machine will automatically start running. So in that case, how you will be specifying in the cron is there is a syntax of the time and date that you will specify, and then followed by what is the exact job that you want to run. So this is how you will be giving line by line entry in the cron. But since it is Jenkins, And if you see, the job is trying to specify the detail, so you don't have to specify the job, so you have to specify only the timestamp. So it will be the same syntax as what it is going to be there in the Jenkins and cron, both are same. So in that case, what is the syntax we will see. So basically, the value for the scheduled time is based on five values or five space separated values. Okay, so what and all are those five values that you need to specify? So first you need to specify the minute, and then hour, then which day of the month, and which month, and finally which day of the week. So it is mandatory that you have to specify all the values based on which Jenkins will exactly know that when the job has to be triggered. Okay, so in that case, now how is that you will be giving the values? So each one of them has its own range. So if you take minute, minute ranges from 0 to 59. So if you want to run a job on a particular time, then you will give that minute. So say you want to run a job every day at 6:30 p.m. So what is that you will give? You will give the value of the first column for the minute as 30. So that represents that every time at the 30th minute, whenever the clock hits it, you want to run it. And in the same way, the next column should have the value for hour, which ranges from 0 to 23. So now when you say that you want to run it at 6:30 p.m., then it will be 18 hour. So how you will specify is, you will specify the first value as 30 space 0 8, or sorry, 18. So now this represents 18th hour and 30th minute of that day you have to run this job. Okay, once you have specified these two, then the third one is day of the month. So which day of the month you want to run? So suppose you wanted to run it on today's date or some particular date, you will give that date here. So now this means it is 7th day of the month, in that 18th hour and 30th minute is what you want to run. Okay, and then after that, okay, I have specified the date, then you have to specify the month, because every month will have the seventh day of the month. So in that, which month? So that value ranges from 1 to 12, wherein 1 stands for January and 12 stands for December. So suppose if you want to run on this particular month, you can simply say 1. So that means on January 7th, 18th hour, 30th minute, you want to run this job. Okay, and then finally this tells the day of the week. That is, when you are saying the 7th January, should it be only on a weekday or should it be on a weekend? Like that you can choose and run. Suppose if you want to run it only if it is on a weekday or weekend, you can specify the day, wherein 0 stands for Monday, or sorry, Sunday, and it proceeds and goes further, and it's like a circle. Once again, 7 represents Sunday, wherein 6 represents Saturday. Okay, so you have to choose a day on which it will be running. So you can give a range of values and work. So sometimes what will happen is you don't want to give such a specific date and time. So what you can do is you can use a combination of several values. Okay, now assume that you want to run this job only during January and February. Then what you will do, you can give multiple values using comma separated. So here if I say 1 comma 2, then that means you have to run this job on January and February 7th of this 2 month, this hour, this minute. Okay, or suppose if I want to run the job on 18th hour, 30th minute and 15 minute, then I can say 15 comma 30. So if you see, there is no space separated because the space should be separated only between these two values, that is minute and hour. For this there should not be any space. Like this you can use multiple values by using comma. So at that particular time it will exactly run. But we need to run it every day, every month. In that case, what will happen? You cannot keep giving values like this. Suppose I want this to run every day of the month. Then what will you do? Will you be giving like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and until 30? It will be very long data, right? Simply instead of that, we can use something called a star, wherein star represents every possible value for that column or for that field. So in that case, what is this field? It is third field, that is day of the month. So when you say star, so it applies to all the day of the month. So in the same way, now if I say star for this, then it means all the month of the year. And in the same case, if I say star for this, then that means it is all the day of the week. So every day, every month, and every year at 8 o'clock, 30, so 15th minute and 30th minute, I want to run this job. Okay, you can specify like this. So sometimes additionally what we can do is I want to run only on the weekdays, that is only from Sunday or Monday to Tuesday. Then you need to, sorry, Monday to Friday. So how will you give a range? So in that case, you can simply say like this. So this means only on Monday to Friday, every month of the year and every day, you run it at 18th hour, 15th minute and 30th minute. So like this, you can specify a range. Okay, fine. And now going to the next thing. Now, how will you give, suppose if I want to run every 2 minutes or every 3 minutes. So neither I can use star nor I can use range or nor I can give this, because I am giving an alternate option saying that I want to run on every 2 minutes interval, that is 2, 4, 6, 8, like that. So in that case we cannot still use this comma, right? So what we can do is simply use the mathematic calculation, that is say star by 2. That means what is the first column that you represent? It is minute. So when you say this, this means every divisible of all the value. So whatever value that you're going to put here, if it is divisible by 2, then run in that. That means every 2 minutes it will be running this job. Okay, so we can specify it like that. And simply if you want to run it every 1 minute, if you just say star star star, what it will do, it will be running every day, every month, every hour and every minute. So this is equivalent to saying it run every minute. Getting that?
Yes, sir.
Any questions, doubts?
No, Adam.
Okay, so
No,
now,
Adam.
okay, so if I say now, so what will happen is I will not click on the build now. So see what happens automatically. So if you just wait for the next 1 more minute, this job will automatically get triggered and it will be printing it. Just let's wait for some time. So you see, it triggered it automatically. And where did it run? It ran using this server or node, whichever it is able to connect. And in that specifically, it is trying to run this task in the remote root directory. Okay, so like this, every 1 minute it will be running. And now if you see on this side, you can see only the three history or the last three runs of the job. Why? Because we have specified to delete the older logs not more than three. So that is why it is keeping only three jobs, which is latest. So as soon as the fifth job runs, then it will delete the older one and keep only the three latest jobs. Okay. So almost if it comes here, it will be running. Okay, there you go. If you just refresh, you will know. Getting it?
Yes, sir.
So if you see everywhere, it would be specifying build, build, build. Why? Because as I said, Jenkins was primarily, intended to use for a continuous integration step. So when you say continuous integration, what is that you will be doing? Basically, you will be doing a build, which is a main step. So that is why it will be saying everything as build history, build now. And if you go to configure, you can see what is the build step that you want to give, build triggers, everything will be in that name. But it is not mandatory that you should always give the build command or step, but you can give anything specifically based on your need. What is that you want to give? Okay, getting that?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so now sometimes what will happen is, so you are running a job, correct? Until now, what happened? So you schedule something and automatically Jenkins will take care of whatever steps that you have given, it will be running. Okay, now let me just remove this. Why? Because if not unnecessarily, this will be running. So I'll just remove this option. So whenever we want, we can use this build now to build it. Okay, now what happens, suppose if you're trying to run something and you want to have an interaction with Jenkins to run, like the user should decide some option or values to run. For example, if you want to run a Maven build automatically using Jenkins, okay, now what is the value that you have to give for Maven when you want to run? You have to specify the goal, right? So which goal will you be specifying? By default, it doesn't know anything. So every user will have their own goal on which they want to run. So in that case, now if you hard code it like this, suppose if you say Maven package, then every time it will be running Maven package. Suppose if you want to run something else and then you have to come here and change it, right? So like this, it is not mandatory that this job will be used only by you. Someone else can also just run it. So in that case, now how is that a user can have an interaction between Jenkins, or how is that a user can choose his values through which Jenkins can run something based on that values? So for that, what we have to do is we have to use an option called build is parameterized in the first column. So if you click this build is parameterized, then it will give you various options on how you can create a parameter. So that means Jenkins, before executing this job, it will ask you to give that value. Based on that, you can choose it. Okay, now if you see, there are many parameters like string parameter, or you can pass a text parameter. If not, suppose say that you don't even want to have a user interaction but still pass a value of your choice, then what you can do is you can have something called file parameter, and when you give it, automatically you can create a file and store the content into it. So when Jenkins is trying to run, it will try to pick the value from that file instead of asking the user. So like this, based on the automation what you want to do, you can do. If not, you can create a choice parameter. That means if you want to give multiple options to the user, you can give that. So let's try to use some of the things which you'll be commonly using. So text and string are both one and the same. Okay, so it's just that either you can pass one string or you can pass a complete text. That is what it is going to do. So let's see that how it is working. So now if you add a parameter, you see it is asking us a name that you want to use for that parameter. Okay, now let me say first underscore or first parameter. Okay, and now it is asking, do you want some default value that has to be used for it? Suppose if the user doesn't know what value to give, then it should be taking the default value whatever you're giving. Okay, then I can say null, something that I can give. And here if you want, you can give some description that will be printed here. So this will be the first value to pass to the Jenkins job. Okay, now once you do this, if you just apply and save, okay, now see this. Until now we had this build now, right? But since you have given the parameters, it will get changed to build with parameters. And now if you click this, what it will do, instead of directly executing the job, it is first asking us the parameter to be entered, wherein this is the parameter name what we have given, and since I had given null, it is just showing it here. If not, if you give some other value, it will be taking it that. So it is giving the same message for us to enter. So now I can enter any value that I want to give, and then if I say build, so Jenkins or sorry Jenkins will be running that specific job using the value whatever that you have given. Okay, so like this you can give as many parameters that you want. So for example, let me add one more parameter. Okay, then I will say here the value as first, and let me choose one more parameter, and I will say second parameter. Okay, and I will give some default value here, and if I apply, you will get this. And when you say build with parameters, you see you will be getting the default values. So if you want to use that itself, you can say build and it will proceed. Okay, fine. Now what is that we did? We used some parameters and we made that we can have an interaction with Jenkins to pass a value, but we just fulfilled only the first half, that is how to get the value from Jenkins. But the second part on how is that, or how to use that value whatever that we got from the user to use it internally within Jenkins, so that we didn't know, right? So for that, what you need to understand is in Jenkins, whatever parameters that you're trying to store, that is these two values, will be stored as a environment variable in the runtime of this job. That means there will be an environment variable called first parameter and second parameter, and that will be storing the value whatever that user is passing. So it is the same way how you will be accessing the environment variable. You will be accessing these two environment variables to get the value. So how is that you will be getting an environment variable in Windows? How is that we'll be getting the value? How is that? You remember we did for Java Home, M2 Home, and all those things. How is that you will enter? You will
Given the
say
percentage.
percentage and percentage. So if you give a variable within this or a string within this, it means that there is an environment variable and try to retrieve the value. Okay, so in the same case, so you will be specifying it like this. So now whatever value that you have entered while running this job, it will be stored in this parameters or in this environment variables, and Jenkins will use that as an environment variable and then get it directly. Okay, suppose if it was Unix, then instead of this percentage, you will be using dollar and the variable name. So you will be saying whatever name that you have given like this, and you will be giving that string whatever that you have given for the name of the variable. Okay, so now if you see, let's try to run this and see. And if I say, right, the first parameter I'll say, and okay, maybe I'll keep my email ID. So if I say build, it is doing the build, and let's go to the output. You see what it has done. It is clearly saying what is the first parameter that you entered is the string, and what is the second parameter that you entered is this string. So this is how you can make use of the values that you have entered into the job, and you can use it and do it specifically whatever you want. Suppose if you wanted to pass it as a parameter to some other command that you're running, then you can run it, or simply like what we are running, you can call one script using this, like anything that can be whatever you're doing. So all you need to do is get the value exactly from the user and use it based on that. Sometimes you might not be using a string, and if you want to use some options, then what you can do is you can make use of this parameter called choice parameter. Okay, so what choice parameters is, I'll say choose option, some name. So you can give some values here. So I'll say mango, apple, banana, grapes, and what else? Something I'll keep. So if I save this, and when I come to build with parameters, you see it is adding a new parameter, and it gives you a drop down option to use it. So if you want, you can have a simple string. If not, you can use some option as a choice of drop down, and you can choose some values whatever that you have given. Okay, so like this you can pretty much use whatever kind of parameter that you want. And now if you want to use the value whatever you have picked, then you have to use this as the environment variable in this particular place. Now if I give this, if I say third value that you have entered, okay, is choose option. And now suppose if I say something and build, you see it gives you that. So no matter what kind of parameters that you're choosing, the name what you choose for that parameter will be the name of the environment variable through which you can retrieve the data later within the job. Getting it?